Hello and welcome back to Grow with Keely. Today's episode is one I thought about recording over and over again for such a long time. And that's because we're talking about PTSD, childhood trauma, and the story behind Safe to Grow. I want to start by saying that this episode isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding. Understanding how childhood experiences can shape us. Understanding why some wounds stay with us long after the events themselves have happened, and understanding why Safe to Grow means so much to me. When people see Safe to Grow today, they see workshops, support groups, community events, resources, a podcast, and a place where people can feel safe and supported. What many people don't realise is that Safe to Grow was born from a childhood where I never truly felt safe. Some of my earliest memories are not memories of toys or even birthdays. They're memories of fear. I remember being a little girl with chlorine still in my hair after swimming. I remember feeling happy and carefree. Then I remember seeing a shadow in the doorway and feeling the atmosphere change instantly. Even at that age, I knew something wasn't right. The room felt tense, unpredictable, like something bad was about to happen, and unfortunately, I was right. And that was my first experience of domestic violence. What followed wasn't one incident, it became a pattern. Police cars, safe houses, court hearings, raised voices, fear and uncertainty. Living in a state where you never quite knew what was going to happen next. As a child, you don't have the words to explain what that does to you. You just learn to survive it. You learn to scan rooms. You learn to listen for changes in people's voices. You learn to prepare for the worst before it even happens. And you learn that safety can disappear in a moment. And the hardest part is that when you grow up like that, survival mode starts to feel normal. I spent years thinking there was something wrong with me. Why was I always anxious? Why did I overthink everything? Why did I struggle to relax? Why did I feel responsible for everyone else's well-being? Why was I always waiting for something bad to happen? What I understand now is that these weren't character flaws. They were survival responses. They were the habits of a little girl who had spent years trying to stay safe. For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was too anxious, too emotional, too cautious, too sensitive, too worried. And what I understand now is that many of the traits I struggled with didn't appear out of nowhere. They came from somewhere. They were learned in an environment where I was trying to survive. People pleasing didn't come from kindness alone. It came from fear. When you grow up around conflict, unpredictability, and violence, you learn very quickly to keep the peace. You learn to watch people's moods. You learn to avoid upsetting people. You learn to make yourself smaller because somewhere in the back of your mind, you're trying to prevent the next explosion. My people pleasing wasn't about me wanting everyone to like me. It was about wanting everyone to be okay. Because when people weren't okay, bad things happened. My anxiety and overthinking came from a similar place. As a child, when I had a feeling that something was wrong, I was usually right. The atmosphere would change, the tension would build, the warning signs would appear. So I learned to look for danger. I learned to analyse everything. I learned to prepare for worst case scenarios. The problem is that when you grow up, your brain doesn't always realise the danger has passed. So you continue looking, you continue analysing, you continue overthinking. Not because you're weak, but because your brain learned that paying attention kept you safe. And trust has always been a difficult thing too, especially with men. Not because I wanted it to be, but because some of my earliest experiences of love, relationships, and family were tangled up with fear. The people who were supposed to make me feel safe didn't always feel safe. And when that's your introduction to relationships, trust can become complicated. Guilt has always followed me for years. Part of me have always wondered if I could have done something differently, if I could have stopped it, protected someone, prevented something, And logically, I know I was a child, but trauma isn't always logical. Sometimes it leaves behind questions that were never ours to carry. People used to tell me I was older than my years. And I don't think that was maturity, I think it was survival. I was carrying worries, responsibilities, and experiences that children were never supposed to carry. I wasn't old beyond my years. I was a child trying to make sense of an adult world. Even now, trauma still shows up. Shouting can trigger me. Violence can trigger me. Certain situations can pull me straight back to that feeling I experienced years ago. Not because I'm weak, not because I'm broken, but because trauma leaves fingerprints, and healing doesn't always erase them. There's also a part of me that worries about people getting too close. Not because I'm ashamed of my story, but because sharing it feels vulnerable. For so many years, I just wanted to be normal, to be seen for who I am today rather than what happened to me yesterday. And then there's sleep, or more accurately, the lack of it. I don't think my nervous system ever truly learned how to switch off. Every sound feels important. Every noise feels like information. Like my brain is constantly asking, do I need to be alert? Do I need to be ready? It's exhausting, but it's also understandable. Because for years, being alert was what kept me safe. The difference now is that trauma no longer controls my life. It whispers, it triggers, it reminds, but it doesn't control me. Because healing happened. Not overnight, not perfectly, but slowly. And one of the biggest parts of that healing has been realizing that I am no longer that little girl. And today I can happily say that I have 5 beautiful children, a husband who has never made me question my safety, a man who reminds me that love isn't supposed to hurt, who holds my hand when things get difficult, who never judges my past, who gently reminds me that I survived it and that I am safe now. The trauma shaped me, but it doesn't own me. The past explains me, but it doesn't define me. And maybe that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Healing isn't about becoming the person you were before trauma. It's about becoming the person trauma tried to convince you'd never be. People often ask me why I created Safe to Grow. And while it's true that I've worked within the mental health sector, that's not the real reason. The real reason is much more personal. Safe to Grow wasn't created because of a qualification. It wasn't created because of a job title. It was created because of lived experience. And I've experienced PTSD, childhood trauma, anxiety, depression, postnatal depression, stress, loss, parenthood, guilt, confusion. Moments where I felt completely lost, moments where I didn't recognize myself, moments where I questioned whether things would ever get better. I've experienced what it feels like to carry invisible battles while trying to convince the world you're okay. I've experienced the loneliness that can come from feeling like nobody truly understands. And through all of it, there was one thing I constantly searched for: a safe space, a safe person, someone who would listen without judgment, someone who wouldn't try to fix me, someone who would simply sit with me in the difficult moments and remind me that I wasn't alone. Sometimes we don't need someone to solve our problems. Sometimes we just need someone to hear them and to acknowledge them, to remind us that our feelings make sense. Safe to Grow was created because I know what it feels like to need that space and not always know where to find it. I wanted to create the kind of place I spent years searching for. A place where people can show up exactly as they are. A place where they don't have to pretend. A place where healing isn't rushed. A place where support, understanding, and connection exist together. A place where people can feel seen, heard, valued, and safe. Because if there's one thing my journey has taught me, it's this: healing becomes a little easier when you don't have to do it alone. And if Safe to Grow can be that safe space, that listening ear, or that reminder that somebody cares, then every part of my journey has been worth it. Before I finish today's episode, I want to speak directly to the person listening who sees themselves in parts of my story. Maybe you grew up too quickly. Maybe you learned how to survive before you learned how to simply be a child. And maybe you're carrying things that happened years ago, but still affects the way you think, feel, trust, love, or move through the world today. And if that's you, I want you to know something. What happened to you matters. The impact it had on you matters. And the fact that you're still here, still trying, still getting up every day despite everything you've been through, that matters too. For a long time, I thought healing meant reaching a point where none of it affected me anymore. But I've learned that's not what healing looks like. Healing isn't forgetting. Healing isn't pretending it never happened. Healing is recognizing the wounds without allowing them to control your future. It's understanding where your fear comes from without letting them make your decisions. It's learning that the little version of you who was scared, overwhelmed, and trying to survive deserves compassion and not criticism. I still have triggers. I still have moments where the past knocks on the door. I still have days where anxiety is loud. But the difference now is that those moments no longer define my life. Because I know something today that I didn't know back then. I am safe. I am worthy. I am loved. And I am no longer that little girl standing in the middle of chaos wondering if everything is going to be okay. Today I have 5 beautiful children. A husband who reminds me every day what safety, kindness and respect looks like. A life that younger me could never have imagined. And a community called Safe to Grow that was built for every lesson, every struggle and every step of healing. So if you're listening and you're still carrying the weight of your past, please hear this. Your story does not end where your trauma began. You are not broken, you are not too damaged, and you are not too far gone. You are a person who survived things that should have never happened. And despite everything, you're still here, still growing, still healing, still becoming, and that is something to be incredibly proud of. Thank you for listening to Grow with Keely, and until next time, remember this. You deserve more than survival. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. You deserve connection. You deserve hope, and most of all, you deserve the opportunity to grow. You are not what happened to you. You are who you choose to become.